Blood starting to flow. Inside, body shots. Big kick. Big kick. Big hook there.
Still ain't got my marbles, but I got these beats banging out the back of my toy car.
The SiriusXM Fight Club is now activated and ready to bring you the hardest-hitting, fastest-paced, most revolutionary combat sports program on the planet. This is the SiriusXM Fight Club on Sirius 94 XM 208. Here are your hosts, RJ Clifford and Ricky Bones.
And Jason Sabir also swinging by the Fight Club. He's an OG member, so he's got it tattooed as a tramp stamp. So we made sure that once he got that, he was officially a member of the Fight Club.
It's a target. It's the most manly tramp stamp you'll ever see, and you're lucky to see it. And let's not forget that.
We're the Sirius XM Fight Club. We were talking during the break, and obviously it's been shot down, the idea of Alistair Overeem fighting Junior Dos Santos just 2 days after his suspension ends in the New Year's show of 2012. It will be Cain Velasquez against Junior Dos Santos coming up later in the year for the UFC Heavyweight Championship, not Alistair Overeem. And Ricky has just been pissed off about it because he really wanted that matchup, and I think we'll see it soon. I don't think there's any question, really, unless something drastic happens, that the winner of JDS Velasquez will fight Overeem next. But we're not getting it as soon as Ricky would have wanted, and he's blaming that on how Overeem handled his whole pissing hot scenario with his testosterone levels getting screwed up.
Yeah, I think that the biggest mistake that Alistair made was the fact that the lawyer that he got was more of a lawyer that kind of goes in there and doesn't really, I don't think, understand the way that it works when you're dealing with a commission and trying to get a fighter license. He just said, you know what, this is the law, this is how it is, we're going to win this thing, I'm going to, bring them to their knees.
Justice will prevail.
Exactly. But,
Wake up call,
but
it's the commissions.
That's the thing, justice doesn't always prevail. Sometimes there has to be some handshakes, some golf games played, some stuff behind closed doors, and I think that's the biggest...
Some offshore bank accounts, getting some wiring to it.
Exactly. I think the biggest thing about this is the fact that it was kind of brought to the forefront. Right. If you watch the Reem, his documentary web series, I mean, they actually filmed certain things of him talking about it. I feel that this should have been taken care of behind closed doors, and it wasn't. And I think the Reem spent a lot of money on a lawyer that completely went to waste because he's not going to be fighting anytime soon.
Because it was completely like the Nevada State Athletic Commission made it completely clear they want Overeem back. Like they reduced his suspension a little bit, and they basically begged him with open arms, saying, "We can't wait for you to come back, guy who cheated and pissed hot on our random drug test." I mean, they made it very clear at the hearing that they want him back. So he already had his foot in the door, and he still screwed it up somehow with how he handled the litigation.
Yeah, I mean, but this is actually kind of common a little bit. I mean, you need to find a very special lawyer who's capable of handling things correctly. And in MMA, this is not, there's not like a bag full of these guys. It's tough to find the right guy. I actually remember hearing a story even when Mike Tyson was facing his criminal charges in the 90s. Don King got him like a tax attorney. You need to find the specialist. You need to find the guy. You need to find the TRT hot piss rap beater lawyer, and I don't know if that guy exists yet. So that's a guy who I'd love to be. Like, if you're in law school right now, kids, start looking into commission law.
There's a market for that.
There's a huge market, untapped.
They need one of those lawyers, and his commercial has to be, "Have you pissed hot on a steroid test? Call 888-HOT-PISS and visit one of our local offices."
Do you walk around at 325 when 5 years ago you were 175 pounds?
Are you the victim of tainted horse meat? We got you covered.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, that's where our sport has gone. I mean, look at all the fighters that are kind of coming out and saying, yeah, I had TRT exemption after the fact. I mean, It's almost like we're entering that era that baseball had with the Sammy Sosas and Mark McGuire's. I mean, we're entering that era where now, apparently, Jason, we were talking about it during the break. You were saying that it's going to become so readily available that eventually everyone's going to be doing it. It's going to be like you're going to be able to get like Red Bull laced with HGH, and it's going to be over-the-counter stuff.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, at some point, it's technology, right? I mean, it's just supplements, it's just vitamins. These things are everywhere. So I actually remember seeing an interview with Joe Rogan where he said in 10 years we're all going to be taking HGH over the counter. I would do it. I would do it in a heartbeat if it was legal and safe. Yeah, man, for sure.
Yeah.
It's the elixir of life. Well, and going back to Overeem, I mean, it's the bad lawyer choice was one thing, but he was also doing, like, I would love to live in the world Alistair Overeem thinks he lives in, because he's basically like he was telling people how he would do random drug tests every 2 or 3 weeks on himself to prove that he wasn't on steroids. He's going to hire these guys. Like, come on, man! Like, you already failed. The first time you ever actually got legitimately tested, you failed it. All right, you're 0 for 1 pretty much in the States in this scenario.
Right.
Because remember, the first time he fought, there was that whole controversy of how he had to move back to Holland when he was supposed to do a random drug test, and he had his own doctor in Holland do the test, and then it wasn't the right test, so they sent it back and forth. So the one time that the test actually was executed correctly in a state commission, you failed it. So you're not going to get in people's good graces. Like, whatever PR move you thought that was, people aren't going to buy it.
It's like, I've tested negative 375 times with my own doctors.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is. This was one test. Maybe the test is wrong. It's just one test. Yeah, I don't buy it.
And I mean, look, logic says that Alistair Overeem probably did something.
I mean, eyeballs dictate that he did something,
and his actions and all that. But I mean,
and it's not fair to blame. It's fair to be skeptical. It's not fair to blame, but you got to live also in reality.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? People are going to look at him and they're going to question.
But if you want to live in reality, also you have to realize that the commission is a bunch of hacks. I mean, that's one thing that we've seen with the whole Nick Diaz debacle. I mean, seriously, fucking marijuana metabolites. I mean, they pretty much created a word in order to screw over Nick Diaz. I mean, that's something that I think if you're going
All right, that's a little bit too much of Nick Diaz nuthuggery right there to say they made up a word.
Yeah, Nick Diaz is like a known pot smoker.
No. I know. I'm not saying Nick Diaz didn't smoke pot, but the fact is that that all their rhetoric leading up to it pretty much was kind of like, yeah, we don't mind if you do, but you didn't file the right paperwork. Meanwhile, they're letting guys do TRT, and it's about paperwork. Are you kidding me? Especially since Nick Diaz and his lawyer did find certain things that kind of made the Nevada State Athletic Commission, their words had contradicted themselves. And I'll give you an example with the Overeem case, how the Athletic Commission how they contradict themselves. All right, remember watching the hearing of Alistair Overeem? If you didn't see the whole thing, you watched it on the Ream. Whether there's this one part where basically you're calling me a Nick Diaz nut hugger. The Nevada State Athletic Commission is hugging Alistair Overeem's nuts. They're like, look, we understand it's a misunderstanding and blah blah blah, and we thank you.
You think Alistair Overeem weighs 280 pounds now? Now he weighs 4,000 pounds because he has all 7 members of the Nevada State Athletic Commission hanging off his nutsack.
And remember, you remember you watched it, RJ. They were very kind of brushing it under the table or making it look like, all right, we understand that it was a mistake, but still we have to do this. Well, listen to this. Keith Kaiser from the Nevada State Athletic Commission, this is the statement that he let out here. He's talking about the whole Overeem thing. He wrote, but even if the commission had some discretion to grant some waiver of time, I personally don't see this as the case. I'd be against that. There is some discretion at the commission level, but I don't think this is the case to use that discretion. This is not just a guy who engaged in cheating, but a guy who ran out the front door when the testing was being done. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that completely fucking contradicts what they were saying at the actual hearing. So come on, give me a break.
And it's the Nevada State Athletic Commission. They bend to the whims. And it's like you talked about earlier. It's not like you can show up with the lawyer because you're convinced the law is on your side. It's not a trial. There's no judge. There's no jury. You're at the whims of the commission. And that's the reality of combat sports in the United States right now.
Yeah, and that's why the UFC, you know what? I guarantee you there are plenty of times where Dana White, if he could, would literally body slam Keith Kaiser or powerbomb him. But he can't because, again, Vegas is a big money-making town for the UFC and MMA, and they have to play by the commission's rules, unfortunately. Otherwise,
but it goes both ways. The UFC brings in ridiculous amounts of money into Nevada by doing all their events in Las Vegas that the Nevada State Athletic Commission needs. The UFC doesn't have to.
Yeah,
the UFC does not have to. They could make another place their home base, and a commission would love to have them.
That's true, but also
it goes two ways.
You have Lorenzo Fertitta, who used to be on the Nevada State Athletic Commission. That's a big reason why. Mm-hmm. The UFC was able to kind of get into the point where they could make rules and make it a little bit more mainstream, but him and Dana live in Vegas. They're deeply embedded in that community. Station casinos, the Fertittas, they're already having a war with the culinary union. I mean, look, Lorenzo Fertitta's not a dumb guy. There's only so many wars you can fight and so many enemies or so many battles before you eventually lose the war.
All right, we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit about UFC 150, not the main card because there's a lot of other really good fights in that card with consequences and repercussions. Also, in about 15 minutes or so, Danny Acosta is coming on with his Acosta KO. I'm RJ, he's Ricky, he's Jason. We're the Sirius